Welcome back. We are back from hiatus. The vision from Microsky is back. I'm Steve Armato, back with Dom Martell. And Dom, first of all, how was your Thanksgiving?
It was amazing. Still recovering from all the food.
As
It's a
we all,
lot.
as we all are. We all are. We all eat a little bit too much. But I want to get into this today. Today's episode, we're going to talk about how to budget within your business. I know this is something that's very important to you. Talk about budgeting in business. Talk about budgeting in life. So Dom, let's start with, how do you put together a game plan for this, and how important is this from the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, a game plan is the best word for it, Steve. Whenever I think of the business, it's trying to put together the plan in which you want to operate the business on the financial side. And a lot of business owners, in the beginning of getting into business, they really don't have a financial game plan when it comes to their budget and where the money is going in the business. So a lot of business owners, they may use like an accounting software like QuickBooks, or look at their bank statements every day and stuff like that. But that's kind of like an after the fact way of looking at the business finances. It's after the money's already came in and already went out. And now you're kind of figuring out where it went, and you got to categorize all your expenses, and you got to try to, tweak things after the money's already spent. So the idea that I kind of came across a few years ago, and I have to thank my little sister Jenna for recommending it, is a software called You Need a Budget. And it was written, the book You Need a Budget was written by the founder of the website, Jesse Meekum, I think his last name is. And, he's a really nice guy. He created, at first, it was a spreadsheet that was a budgeting spreadsheet to track your money coming in and out. And then he kind of embraced the cloud and created an app that's hosted on their website and through, on the phone. So you're able to create, a personal budget for your life, for your personal finances, as well as a business budget with this software. And, that software opened up my eyes, because now I can proactively plan every month and say, okay, here are the expenses for my business. Here's all my different categories, or let's call them envelopes, that I need to allocate money into for the business, operating expenses, payroll, taxes, profits, all that stuff. And, I read a few books along the way that kind of gave me a framework on how to approach this You Need a Budget software. So the first one was the You Need a Budget book, and the second one was a book called The Profit First Method by Mike Michalowicz. And that book was a game changer, because it makes you think about profit first in your business and coming up with percentages for all the different sections of the business: your taxes, your profit, your payroll, your cost of goods, your operating expenses. And the book opened up my eyes in a way to okay, you can allocate your whole business with percentages, and over time you can tweak those percentages as your business grows and your expenses change and things change in the business. And, it took a lot of, like I said, getting punched in the face and making a lot of mistakes to about 5 years ago get to the point where I was like, you know what, I really got to get this budgeting thing down pat. So, the first step, what I would recommend everybody do, is read those two books, You Need a Budget and The Profit First Method, and then to immediately sign up for YNAB.com, YNAB.com. And, you get a free trial when you sign up. I think they give you a month or two for free. And then I think it's $85 for the year for the subscription, but it's the best $85 you could possibly spend, because now you just got all of this control over your finances. So, I was going to share my screen, but a lot of people listen through audio, so I'll basically just explain the concept of it. But basically, whenever, money comes into your, let's just use the business as an example, it comes in, and then all of that money is just considered like a pile of cash. All the money in your business bank accounts, in your whatever bank account you use for the business, think of that as a pile of cash, and every dollar of that cash needs a job. So when the money comes in, if somebody writes you a check for, let's just say $100, you need to percentage out that $100 to all the proper categories. So just to give you a starting point of what I use today as far as my percentages for Microsky, the framework that I use is 3% goes to my retirement account, of the business revenue. 10% goes to the vault. I call it my vault. Basically, 10% all revenue goes into its own envelope, and it just sits there and builds up as the year goes on. The next one would be profit. So Profit First Method, 10% towards profits. So there's a separate envelope for that. That builds up over the year. Then I do 15% for taxes. Then I do 15% for, let's call it Dom's salary. And then I do 10% for owner's compensation. That would be me as the owner, bonuses at the end of the year, stuff like that. And then the operating expenses would be about 37%. So every dollar that comes in gets percentaged out and goes to these, let's just call them the top level categories. And then of those top level categories, there's a bunch of subcategories. So like under operating expenses, it would be all the operating expenses for the business. And under, owner's compensation, that would just be me. But then taxes, that would cover all the different tax bills that come up throughout the year. Sales tax, corporate taxes, all that kind of stuff. So the idea on the business side is to kind of get a grasp of the money as it comes in and responsibly, dish it out to where it needs to go. And it allows you to focus more on making more money for the business.
Yeah, so that's a great way to explain it. And like for people that don't know, for people that don't really understand this, because I think this is tough when you first start, like when you first get in, people don't really understand taxes, how they're going to work, how to put stuff aside for that. So how do you use this solely to plan taxes, or are there other areas that you put away for taxes? Because like there's business taxes that you're going to pay, and
Yep.
there's also the personal taxes that you're going to pay. It depends if you're an S corp, if you just get distribution. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I am not an accountant, so obviously I have a CPA that does my taxes for the business every year. But I do have a full-time bookkeeper that uses QuickBooks for day-to-day bookkeeping. And basically QuickBooks is a mirror image of my YNAB, because all of the same bank accounts and all that same transactions are flowing through QuickBooks the same way they flow through YNAB, except QuickBooks to me is that after the fact, like at the end of the month, running QuickBooks reports, running sales tax reports, looking at payroll reports, payroll tax, all that stuff. That's on the QuickBooks accounting side. But YNAB is more of the proactive cash flow management that the business owner needs. Like every morning when I get to my desk, I'm looking at YNAB, I'm seeing what the latest transactions that came in, looking at the next bills that are set to go out and get paid. And all of this stuff gets programmed into YNAB as individual envelopes, so to speak. So, for instance, if you have your internet bill, that would be one envelope. If you wanted to save a certain amount for a vacation and you're, on the or business trip or something like that, you could set a category long term for savings. You could do, let's say you have a credit card you want to pay off. There's different ways you could set goals to pay that credit card off to avoid interest. There's so many different things, but once you get control of it and you can see the problem, so to speak, that you have at that moment, now it opens up your eyes that like every day I have to look at this thing and I kind of have to claw my way out of it. And, 5 years ago when I started this journey with it, I was in a bad spot. Like I had kind of accrued business debt over time growing the business. Nobody handed me a lump sum of money and said, hey, go start a business. It was kind of done little by little over a long time period, and I had accrued debt over that time. You use a credit card to purchase equipment, and then customer doesn't pay you. Now you got a credit card debt, and things got a little out of hand due to mismanagement on my side. It was my fault, and I was like, I have to get this under control, and I have to get better at cash flow management, or else I'm not going to succeed. So it was an eye-opening experience. I was like 29 at the time when I found it. And I just went on a daily journey every day to climb out of the hole that I had dug myself, and then said, all right, how I'm going to prevent this from ever happening again. And I also want to be financially healthy. So at the end of the year, when taxes are due and all this stuff, it's not a mass scramble and a mass stress to do all the financial stuff of a business, because most business owners don't take that side of it seriously in the beginning, and it puts them in that bad spot, like out of the gate.
And so with that too, so how important is it to do this from the beginning? And like, how do you do this from the beginning? Like, do you do this like as soon as you set your business up? Like, is this something that you do immediately? Why is it immediately? And like, how do you do this immediately?
So the first, method of attack I would say is, if you're just a brand new business starting, is you need to find out what your overhead is going to be for the business. Are you getting a brick and mortar store? Are you going virtual? What are your monthly bills going to be? Those true expenses, those reoccurring bills every month, you have to know what those are and get them programmed into YNAB, so this is the operating expense nut I need to make, so to speak, every month. Once you know your operating expenses, then you can start figuring out, what type of revenues or money do we need to bring in to cover these expenses and meet our goals for the budget. Let's just say you have an overhead of 5,000. Well, you need to gonna have to make at least 5,000 to break even. So now, maybe you got to shoot for a $10,000 a month income goal. And what does that look like for you? Is it signing up 10 customers at $1,000 a month? Is it doing 10 jobs for 1,000? You figure out whatever your product or service is going, that you're selling, what those prices are, and then you're like basically reverse engineering the idea of the business to figure out what would my overhead be. Let's do some planning here to figure out what we need to make to actually be profitable. And then from there, it's a day-to-day thing, tweaking the budget, moving percentages around, trying to bring in more revenue. I mean, that's the CEO or the business owner's number one job is to have money in the bank account and to continue to have money come into the bank account. So, as the business owner, you're the number one salesperson. So this allows me at least to not have to worry about the minutia of the business and the bills and all the financial side of it. I have a system in place that I can reference every day. I could focus on selling. I could focus on revenue growth. And as revenues grow, it feeds the budget. And it's almost like gamifying your finances in a way where you're competing with yourself, setting up financial goals in the software. You're seeing your progress. You're getting out of debt if you want. Like once you start feeling the wins stack up, it just helps the process move along so much better. For me, it's been a 5-year process with YNAB, and I thank my sister like every single day for showing it to me, really.
And and now like you talked about certain things like feeding into the business. So like you had said earlier, talked about like percentages, and are there target percent, like you have target percentages, but then how do those targets change as you go?
It's really a response to revenue changes, more money coming in or less money coming in, right? So I've been grateful enough that Microsky has been growing at a pretty steady pace over the past 5 years. So as revenues grew, percentages changed and more money's going into different places that it was needed. And it was a trial and error thing because the book, The Profit First Method, gives you target percentages based on your business's revenue. So I could pull up a chart, or you could pull up a chart and just search Profit First TAP, target allocation percentages. And it'll show you, like, if your business does 500,000 a year, this is what your percentages should be. If it does 1 million, this is what it does. But there's some things to keep in mind with these percentages, and the book goes into it, is they're talking about your revenues after your cost of goods. So to give an example, if you're selling clothing and you do $1 million a year, but you had 500,000 in overhead cost of goods for your inventory, you're only doing the percentages off of 500 and the money brought in clear after your cost of goods, because that revenue wouldn't be there without the cost of goods. So that's a big, negative that you need to subtract when you're doing your profit first method percentages, and the book dives into this. But the one thing I didn't like about his book is he's not a YNAB user, so he's actually had set up like 6 different bank accounts for his business, and each bank account had like its own percentage allocation. So he would have like an operating expense bank account, a taxes bank account, a profit bank account, and he was doing it by an account by account bank account basis. And with YNAB, you don't need to do that, because you have all these digital envelopes that you can fill in the software. So you just need to create your envelopes. And then once money comes in, I just go to percentagecalculator.net. And if I got, let's just say 5,000 that came in today, I go right to what's 3% of 5,000, what's 10% of 5,000. And I just start moving the money from my ready to assign money in the software to its appropriate expense category. And as the month goes on and revenue comes in, everything gets fed. And usually by like the 10th of the month, all of my categories are basically green and they're funded, and I'm kind of operating in a surplus because it's been so long of me using the software, and I have a lot of different, savings nest eggs built into it. But it's something that it revolutionized the way I did business, because now I'm not stressed about the financial operations of the day-to-day. All I care about is delivering on the customers and selling. And that's what the owner should be focused on. And I would always recommend somebody gets a full-time bookkeeper that they could do your bookkeeping for you, like your categorizations and all your business reports and all that stuff. So come tax season, you just got to sit down with your bookkeeper, print up everything, review everything, make sure there's no mistakes, and then you hand it over to your accountant, and you're basically making your accountant's job super easy, like super easy.
So now with YNAB, can you can you move the money in within YNAB, or like you have to just allocate it and the money move, you have to still move it yourself, like in the accounts and
Yes.
stuff?
So in YNAB, you add all your bank accounts and it uses a live like sync tool. So let's just say you add your operating checking account for your business. Let's just say you have $10,000 in there. It'll show your bank balance of $10,000 bank account. And then every transaction from today forward that you make in that bank account, it's going to pull in those individual transactions. If you spend money out of that account, it'll show you spend $10 at Dunkin' Donuts or whatever. And each transaction you categorize, and it starts to get smarter and know all of your different expenses. So if you go to the same place multiple times, like YNAB is going to pick it up that that's a dining out expense, or that's your electric bill or whatever. And basically once all of those expenses are categorized and you have your bank accounts connected, I could go to a specific expense category. Let's just call it my rent category. And I can move money from the rent category to my electric bill category. And the money is still sitting in your bank account at the bank. Nothing's happening at the banking side. It's just organizing your stack of cash for you. Why not? So it's kind of like, oh, the pile of the money is sitting in the bank account, but YNAB is organizing it into like little white envelopes, so to speak. And you could draw from each envelope. You could save up in an envelope. You could wipe out an envelope if you want. It's completely up to you and what your categories are. But it's not a big learning curve. We're talking about it might take you maybe 15 minutes to set up your business budget or your personal budget in YNAB, and then you let the system bring in the transactions going forward.
Okay. Now, that sounds good, actually. I think that sounds solid. But I do want to ask you this question, and I know the answer. Well, actually, it's not really a question. I want you to talk about the difference, because maybe a lot of people are new, but a lot of people don't really understand the difference between revenue and profit. And I know that might sound a little bit naive, but some people just don't understand that, like, if a business, let's just say a business makes $1,000 in revenue, that doesn't mean they made $10,000 in profit. They could have only made $2,000 in profit, which isn't like an awesome margin. I mean, some businesses operate at different margins. Maybe for some businesses, that's an awesome margin. I don't really know which ones that exist at, but can you talk about that difference in margins and how, like, not just money that comes in doesn't mean that that's what you're taking home. There's a lot of different things that have to happen, especially as your business gets bigger.
Yeah, I mean, it all really depends on how big your overhead is on your business. And, the more assets the business has and store locations and stuff like that, the overhead goes up and up and up. So I'm in the camp of, I like my overhead to be as low as humanly possible because I can reflect a better price point to my client overall when it comes to what we offer as far as pricing goes. So it all really depends on the business you're in, the industry, and what product or service you're selling. But overall, at the end of the year, you need to have a profit margin in your business. Your business cannot be negative. So if you have your top line revenue number and then you have your bottom line net profit, number, that net profit number's got to be in the green. And it really needs to be a nice size percentage of the overall revenue number. I think a healthy profit margin is like 15% to 30% for a business. That's what you want to strive for. Overall, I think that's a good number to be at. But every year things change. You may lose a big client and revenue numbers go down, and sometimes expenses go down with that, depending on the industry and what services you're providing that customer. So it's really case by case, but at least having a proactive approach to the budgeting side of it puts you ahead of the game of most business owners out the gate if you do this. Because like 95% of business owners are just using traditional accounting tools, and they're seeing where the chips fall after they've already fell. So it's kind of trying to get ahead of the game and understand, like, what is my financial model for this business? And is it even sustainable? Because then some people they'll get into business and they realize, like, there's just not enough money in this. There's not enough profit margins. Labor costs are too high. So knowing your numbers early is like key. And I wish I knew my numbers earlier. I kind of just operated by the seat of my pants the first few years because, I didn't know better. And then I was able to get educated on this stuff.
How has that changed for you now? Like, what has that done? Like, where were you to where you are now? Where were you when you started to where you are now?
It's exponential difference, and it's also a quality of life thing too. Like, when you're in business and things aren't going your way and like bills can't get paid or customers didn't pay you, that stress takes a massive, massive toll because like it just compounds over time, and then you get to a point where you're like, man, I should just quit this, go back to my day job, or maybe I'm doing something wrong. I got to find a mentor to help me. So just tapping people for advice over the years, and it was kind of hard to find people that I considered super super successful personally in business. There were only a few that I could ask, financial questions about without trying to be nosy and digging into their affairs. But like, I had to just read books, man. Like, reading financial books and business books is the education that I needed to get me past that dark time. And I'm glad I did. And it's a constant thing now. I'm always trying to read new books and learn a new skill or brush up on something, because one idea or one concept can completely change the game for you. And it's just a matter of trying to find that opportunity, find that thing that is going to take you over the line. And I feel like this concept today has been bugging at me because I really want to like teach people this and show people this at a bigger level, but kind of just giving somebody the framework. Like, here's what you need. Here's the books you got to read. Here's the software that you need to sign up for. And you need to use this shit every day and use it in your personal life first. If you have a day job and you don't have a business yet, learn how to budget your W-2 income the best that you can. And then when you're ready to make that plunge into business, definitely start with your budget. And then if you're an existing business owner and you've been in business a while and things are getting tough, or that there's progress to be made, I really implore you to embrace this, because it's going to take you guys to the next level very quickly. And the bigger the business you are, the quicker that this system is going to help you. For the smaller guy, it takes a while because you don't got a lot of money coming in. You got to do a 1% here, 1% there, switch for your percentages. But when you're a bigger company and there's bigger swings of revenue and expenses, I think it can happen much quicker for them to get their numbers right.
There you go. I think this is good, because I think is that if you ask most people, they don't really know what their numbers are, especially in businesses that have, I guess, a lot of overhead or just a lot of cost. Like, even if you're a restaurant business or like a restaurant business or whatever. So I think this is really good for that. Now, I also wanted to ask you this quickly before we wrap this up and get out of here. I wanted to ask you this one quickly. When it comes to, you had mentioned chasing customers for payment for money. I know that you have figured out a better way to do this. Can you talk about that on here?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing with getting paid by customers is the billing system and how you actually bill them and what your billing terms are and what systems you're using, right? So we have a help desk system that manages all of our tickets, all of our invoices, all of our estimates. Everything goes through there. But I linked up with a payment processor, alternative payments. They're more geared towards service providers like myself. And I was able to automate about 90% of my customer billing. So that means literally that 9 out of 10 of my customers are on auto bill. And it's just automatic. They know it's coming. They have access to their customer portal. They can see their auto bill rules. They have a bank account or a credit card on file. And, for the monthly services and the reoccurring services, it's pretty much all on auto bill. And then the other 10% is like basically the projects and one-off invoices. About like 65% of payments were automated, and now we're at about 90%. And that was a game changer. And that automation could be done with any platform out there if you just do it the right way. I chose them because it was the best fit at the time with the rates and the fees and all that stuff. So it just made a lot of sense. But sales and receivables and trying to get money in business is tough, especially when it's economically a tough time. People's cash flow isn't there. So my recommendation is, if you are a business and you have a tough time paying your bills, this video is definitely for you. And using YNAB is definitely going to help you get out of that rut and have better cash flow management to make your business thrive. I want to see everybody win. I don't want to see people go out of business because they didn't get their numbers.
And what do you say to people who say that they don't have enough cash flow? Like I don't have enough cash flow to do this. I'm getting hit. Like I get like one person here gets me every 3 weeks, and then this person hits me every 6 weeks. Like, what do you say to those people? How is there a way to fix that, or do they just need to figure that out themselves?
To fix that ultimately is to just get better at selling and just keep delivering at a high level, and the money will follow. But the problem is if you continue to improve your service and you start getting more clients and all that stuff, but you still have bad cash flow management. Doesn't matter how much money you make. There are plenty of businesses that make tens of millions of dollars and they squander that money. And at the end of the year, they're not profitable. It's not about how much you're making. It's how well you're managing the money that you're making and how much you get to keep at the end of it. I mean, if you make $1 million and you have nothing to show for it, it means nothing.
You made nothing.
It means nothing. You didn't do anything to better your business, your life, your employees, your team. You did nothing as a business owner to make the business better. So, we talked about failure rates in business and all that stuff, and I am sure a lot of that has to do with people not budgeting their business finances or estimating what the numbers were, and we didn't realize rent was going to be so much, or taxes, or our electric bill was going to be $1,000 a month, or whatever the hell it is. Things happen in business. Having the right tools and the right game plan out the gate, man, is really, I would feel like 80% of it.
No, absolutely. And I think for people too, this is things that people don't really look at from the beginning. They look at like, oh, I'm going to charge this much and this is how much I'm going to make, but you're not keeping that regardless. Even if it's just taxes that you have and you're a solopreneur, you're not keeping all that. I feel like this has been very helpful for people to see. And like, how can people find you and reach out if they do want to reach out to you and talk to you about this?
Best place would be our website, microskyms.com. All of our social media channels are on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Steve, I mean, DM us, contact us from our website. I implore everybody to give this a shot. Do a 30-day challenge with youneedabudget.com, YNAB.com. And, build a budget for your business, build it for your personal life, or even just build a mock budget of a business idea you have. Like, what would your expenses and what would some of your income numbers be on a business idea you have? And I'd love to hear from everybody. They can, email me at dom@microskyms.com if they have any questions. And I look forward to hearing from everybody on this.
Awesome. And we are going to be back next week, actually. We'll be back next week, and then it's Christmas season, so after Christmas we'll be back in the new year. But so I know we've been a little bit scattered with this. We've been every other week, or we went to, and then it was Thanksgiving. But we will be back this week and next week, and then we're going to take a little Christmas break. So everyone, thank you for joining. Don't forget to follow The Vision on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. And also don't forget to follow Microsky MS and Dom at Need an IT Guy on all social media channels. So like I said, we will see you next week. Dom, once again, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Steve. You too.